Private Jess Vega never thought her week would start with government-sanctioned torture. Yet here she was, hooked up to a nightmare machine designed by what looked like a sadistic octopus who'd binge-watched medieval documentaries and taken notes. Please confirm readiness. Drone the CAC technician, an insectoid warrior named Scythcat, whose 4 glossy eyes blinked in what Jess had come to recognize as bureaucratic exasperation. His mandibles clicked with the rhythmic despair of someone forced to explain paperwork to a cactus. Jess rolled her eyes. "You want me to do what now?" "Demonstrate your species' pain," response threshold. Scythcat said matter-of-factly, as though it were the most casual request in the universe. "Our medical coalition requires standardized combat resilience data." Jess blinked. "Combat fitness? I'm a maintenance tech. I fix things, usually with a wrench, occasionally with duct tape. Why am I here?" "All humans must be tested," Scythcat insisted, gesturing toward the neural stimulator. The device hummed ominously, a tangle of chrome coils, biosensors, and something that looked suspiciously like a glowing cattle prod. Jess stared at the device. "You realize this looks like someone gave H.R. Geiger a Red Bull and told him to design a massage chair." "It has been calibrated," Scythcat replied. 3 more aliens entered the sterile testing chamber. A gleaming crystal obelisk representing the Mektari, basically sentient disco balls with superiority complexes, and a spindly green medic from the Zalari species who resembled a praying mantis in a lab coat. Jess sighed and cracked her knuckles. "Okay, fine. What's the record?" "The Mektari achieved level 82 out of 100. We CAC typically reach the mid-70s. The average species taps out around level 47. And the safe level, 15. Jess's eyes flicked to the glowing bar graph on the wall. She raised an eyebrow. "You know what? Let's get this party started." The machine clicked to life. Scythcat's tone was cool and precise. "Level 1 initiated." Jess leaned back. Has it started?" "Level 8, the Zalari medic answered, glancing at his readouts with concern. Jess scratched her nose. "Huh, itchy, like when your leg falls asleep." The Mektari's crystal surface dimmed slightly. Was that concern? Amusement? It was hard to tell, with living prisms. "Level 15, Scythcat said. Minimum threshold." "Oh yeah," Jess said brightly. "That's about as bad as carpet static. You know, when you shuffle across the room in socks and zap yourself on a doorknob." The Zalari's antennae twitched. That sensation causes discomfort?" Jess nodded. "Yeah, on Earth we call it Monday." The machine whirred louder. "Level 25, Scythcat announced." Jess tilted her head. "Mild, kind of like a tattoo. You guys ever get those?" The Zalari nearly dropped his tablet. "You voluntarily pierce your skin for decoration?" "Sure," Jess said. "I've got 3. One of them took 8 hours. The artist had to take more breaks than I did." "Level 40, Scythcat said, his voice a little less smug now." "Spicy," Jess replied. "Sunburn plus a pulled muscle. I've had worse days doing yoga with a hangover." The Mektari edged toward the exit. "Level 60. Jess winced slightly. "Okay, now we're cooking." About the level of getting slammed in the shin by a toddler with a scooter. Still manageable. Scythcat clicked nervously. "Level 75. CAC maximum." Jess grinned. "Oh, this is what you guys max out at. I've had worse menstrual cramps." All 3 aliens froze. The Zalari made a high-pitched wheeze. "You endure this level of pain regularly?" Jess shrugged. "Not everyone. But, yeah. Also childbirth is a thing. My sister says it's like passing a watermelon through a soda straw." Scythcat's exoskeleton paled. "Level 82, he whispered. Mektari maximum." Jess said. "Reminds me of that time I broke my arm falling off a roof." was trying to fix an antenna in a thunderstorm. Long story. Level 90. Jess took a breath. This is getting impressive. Still not as bad as my kidney stone last year. Though, drove myself to the hospital while vomiting into a travel mug. The Mektari fled the room. The Zalari began praying softly. Level 95, Zithkat said weakly, his mandibles trembling. Initiating emergency stop. What? No. Jess protested. We didn't even hit 100. The machine powered down with a defeated wheeze. The room smelled faintly of ozone and panic. Zithkat swayed. Test concluded, most comprehensively. Jess stood and flexed her shoulders. Guess that's it, huh? The Zalari muttered, your species is horrifying. The data suggests you experienced catastrophic pain levels while referencing decorative skin procedures and menstruation. Jess shrugged again. Humans are weirdly durable. Endorphins are great. And hey, pain builds character, right? No more examples, Zithkat pleaded, as she left the chamber, humming a cheerful tune and rubbing a sore knuckle. The aliens behind her stared in silence, united in a single unspoken realization. Humanity was not to be trifled with. 3 days later, all humans in the coalition were classified as Type X shock troops. Jessica received the update on her communicator and snorted. Drama queens, she muttered. Then she dropped a wrench on her foot and actually swore. If Private Jess Vega had learned anything from her years in the Interstellar Maintenance Corps, it was that any meeting labeled mandatory was a trap. So when her datapad chirped with an urgent summons to the Coalition Elite Combat Training Facility, she groaned. Must be a mistake, she muttered, wrenched deep in a broken coolant pump. I fix things. I don't break them. But it wasn't a mistake. And an hour later, Jess stood on the edge of a training field so hostile it looked like someone had let a sadistic video game designer loose with a build-your-own-death gauntlet kit. There were rope climbs, lava-colored pits, razor-edged walls, suspicious steam jets, and a narrow crawl space lined with spikes. Jess whistled. Wow, this place looks like OSHA's recurring nightmare. Surrounding her were at least 24 alien officers, CAC, Mektari, Zalari, and others who all kept a polite but very obvious 30-foot distance. Zithkat, the CAC technician from the pain test, approached cautiously, antennae twitching. Private Vega, thank you for coming. Did I really have a choice? No, he admitted. After your previous demonstration, the Coalition has updated your classification. You're now a Type X tactical asset. Jess blinked. I'm a what? A weaponized human. She groaned. I change fuses. I don't win wars. You changed how 12 species define pain, Zithkat muttered, gesturing toward the obstacle course. The current record for this training simulation is 47 minutes. Multiple injuries. We wish to observe your performance. Jess sized it up. You want me to run this death trap? I'm wearing work boots and haven't had coffee. We'll adjust your time accordingly. She cracked her knuckles. Fine, but I want it on the record that if I die, it's because you made me exercise before caffeine. Begin, shouted the CAC monitor. The timer started. Jess jogged to the first wall, 30 feet of smooth plating with tiny handholds. She climbed like she was changing a ceiling-mounted power array, muttering to herself. Handholds could use some grip tape. Better than that one time I scaled a plasma tower during a magnetic storm. Though, the aliens below made distressed noises. One Zalari started hyperventilating. Jess dropped from the top, rolled, and sprinted toward the next obstacle, swinging platforms above a bubbling pit. Acid, she called cheerfully mid-leap. You guys know coolant is more dangerous when it vaporizes, right? She landed, bounced, and continued without breaking stride. The CAC observers began whispering into translators. A Mektari flickered red, the equivalent of visible panic. The steam vents came next. Jess charged into the hissing mist and emerged seconds later, damp and unimpressed. "Cute," she called. "But I've welded reactor cores in worse. This one time the ambient temperature was so high I had to drink electrolyte paste through a straw. Got a tan through my helmet. Someone in the observer group fainted. 2 others backed away, muttering prayers. The final crawl space was a tunnel of jagged metal, intentionally designed to shred uniforms. "Ooh, cozy," Jess said, belly crawling with ease. "Reminds me of the ductwork back home. Except less rust. You ever try rerouting cable inside a still-charged conduit? Now that's a party." She emerged on the other side covered in dust and blood, one boot missing, grinning. The silence that followed was deafening. Zithkat checked the timer. 8 minutes, 43 seconds. Jess shrugged. "Not bad. Probably could have shaved a minute if I wasn't wearing steel toes." The mantis-like training officer approached with what looked like genuine reverence. "You are injured." Jess glanced at the blood on her arms. "Oh, that. Surface cuts. Got worse trimming my hedges." "You own hedges?" "I did. Then I accidentally set them on fire trying to install an outdoor power relay. It's a long story." The training officer looked faint. "You set fire to a bush with wiring?" "Yeah," Jess said. "The squirrels were fine." The alien stared at her like she just disarmed a black hole using popsicle sticks and ambition. "Can I go now?" she asked, already turning. "Got a fusion stabilizer with my name on it." Zithkat stammered. "Yes, you are dismissed, with extreme prejudice, for the sake of interspecies morale." Jess waved. "Neat. Let me know if you upgrade this course. I've got some ideas involving gravity boots and fireproof foam." She was gone before the group could agree whether to flee or cry. Later that day, her personnel file was updated. New designations: Type X shock trooper, unauthorized survival specialist, walking psychological warfare. Somewhere deep in coalition command, a subcommittee debated whether human maintenance techs needed warning labels. Meanwhile, Jess was already halfway through fixing a broken stabilizer, humming cheerfully, covered in grease, and blissfully unaware that her casual existence had just shattered another section of the galactic military playbook. It was a Thursday. Jess Vega was reasonably sure of that, though her sleep schedule and the station's timekeeping never quite agreed. All she knew for certain was that gravity had just decided to give up while she was inside a malfunctioning stabilizer array. One moment, she was elbow-deep in a tangle of cables. The next, ceiling, floor, pain. "Ow," she muttered, blinking up at the blurry overhead lights. Well, that's new. She tried to sit up. Her leg didn't agree. There was a crunch. "Okay, that's gonna bruise. Or, need reconstructive surgery." From the shadows, a shriek echoed. "She's down. Human down." 3 maintenance staff, Zalari, a CAC junior tech, and a gelatinous entity Jess vaguely remembered being named Squarb, bolted toward her, panicking. "It's just a leg," Jess tried to say, but her voice was drowned by sirens. Within 10 minutes, the hallway was cordoned off, and 3 emergency medical teams descended like overzealous fruit bats. By the time Jess was on the stretcher, she was flanked by 2 biopriests, a team of medical drones, and someone who looked suspiciously like a legal observer. "People," she groaned. "I just need a cast and a cookie, preferably in that order." "Remain calm," said the Zalari medic, who was visibly trembling. "You've experienced severe skeletal trauma. Attempting to walk was—" "I wasn't walking. I was dragging myself to the breaker panel. Priorities." "You crawled on a broken leg," the medic whispered, horrified. "Why?" "'Cause the stabilizer was still offline." They looked at her like she'd spoken in blood. The Coalition Medical Bay had prepared for a worst-case human emergency ever since the pain scale incident and the obstacle catastrophe. What they hadn't anticipated was Jess Vega arriving with a grin and a limp. Upon arrival, she was immediately scanned, sedated against her will, and transported to a suite that looked like a luxury hotel room designed by obsessive AI with a hospital fetish. Her leg, now suspended in a stasis field of glowing teal particles, shimmered like it belonged on a magazine cover titled Bionic Vogue. When Jess woke up, a Zalari medic stood by her bedside with a tablet in one hand and an expression that could only be described as profound religious concern. "Welcome back. How is the pain level?" Jess stretched. "Honestly, feels great. Better than my college hangovers." "You were conscious when the fracture occurred?" "Well, yeah. It's not like I black out every time something goes wrong. If I did, I'd have passed out during training, pain tests, or literally every Monday." The medic clutched their data pad. "Your species is appalling." "Thanks," Jess said. "We try." The door hissed open, and a dozen observers shuffled in. Species from across the coalition, each holding tablets or scanners, whispering and watching her like she was a cryptid someone had managed to sedate. "We've initiated full skeletal regeneration," the medic announced, "neural recalibration, tissue reconstruction, and complete metabolic stabilization. You were unconscious for 3 solar cycles. 3 days. For a broken leg." It was not just a broken leg. Jess glared. "Where I come from, kids get hurt worse falling off monkey bars." The room gasped. Someone fainted. "Besides," she continued, "you didn't even use a cast or duct tape. Just shiny lights and whatever this is." She gestured to her stasis-ensconced leg. "You call that just a broken leg?" The head medic croaked. "You tried to walk it off." "I've walked off food poisoning worse than that," she muttered. "Once finished an entire shift with a dislocated shoulder and a migraine." "Stop talking," the medic begged. The next morning, the coalition issued a medical protocol update titled Human Emergency Guidelines. Revised Edition 19.3. They are not okay, but they think they are. It was 87 pages long and included the following new mandates. Human personnel must be treated with maximum containment protocols, even for minor injuries. Human statements such as "it's fine," "I've had worse," or "just give me tape" are to be considered medical red alerts. Any attempt by a human to leave medical supervision early is to be treated as an unauthorized tactical escape. Jess, of course, learned none of this until after she stole a wheelchair and rolled herself out of the med bay. She had work to do. By the time she returned to her repair bay, her entire workstation had been modified. Foam padding on every edge, safety drones hovering on standby, bubble wrap on her chair, a small shrine of offerings from terrified junior engineers. "Drama queens," she muttered, grabbing a wrench. Then she accidentally gave herself a paper cut, flipping through the repair manual. Okay, that actually stings. The entire bay evacuated in 12 seconds flat. The station's automated safety drone, model A9X Guardian, was designed to react to workplace hazards with surgical precision and calm protocol enforcement. It had neutralized falling scaffolding, extinguished electrical fires, and once escorted an angry squid diplomat to the nearest meditation pod. None of that had prepared it for Jess Vega. The human maintenance tech returned to work 2 days after her accidental ceiling slam and leg fracture, cheerfully dragging a cart of tools, a half-finished cup of something labeled jet black coffee, and a wrench with scorched grip tape that looked like it had seen war. The drone scanned her. Injury detected. Unauthorized mobility. Engaging safety protocol. It hovered forward with a soft chime. "Human, you are not cleared for." Jess threw a donut at it. It bounced off the drone's hull and fell into its fan intake with a soft plop. "I am fine," she growled, stepping over 3 caution cones and past a holographic display flashing biohazard risk in 5 languages. The gravitational stabilizer won't repair itself, and I refuse to let a minor bone reconstruction get in the way of a Wednesday. The drone paused, then quietly backed up and summoned 4 more drones. Overnight, the coalition's engineering bay 12 was transformed into something between a daycare and a hostage negotiation zone. Foam padding was installed on every surface. Tools were replaced with dull-edged, injury-mitigated versions, hammers made of soft rubber, shockproof wiring sleeves, and screwdrivers that beeped if twisted too fast. Warning signs covered every wall. Caution, human zone. Maintenance in progress. Pray for U.S. In case of Jess, break glass and run. Jess stared at the changes with a blank expression. You wrap my wrench. In foam. With a bow. The maintenance supervisor, a 6-eyed creature named Viararkin, twitched nervously. It's for safety. You took my flame cutter and replaced it with a spork. Safety. There are drones following me with portable containment fields. Viararkin gestured helplessly. It's in the manual. The updated version. Section 14.8. Human occupational reinforcement and emotional stability systems. Jess narrowed her eyes. You turned me into an acronym. Horace, Viararkin confirmed, then winced. 2 hours later, Jess found herself cornered by a CAC safety compliance officer, a Mektari insurance rep, and a Zalari trauma specialist. Why were you seen climbing a maintenance scaffold without harness support? The CAC demanded. Because I needed to reach a junction box. There was an access drone available. I would have had to wait, Jess deadpanned, and I needed to finish the job before it set the lighting deck on fire again. The Mektari flickered. You were electrocuted during the repair. Minor zapping. Jess corrected. It's not real electrocution unless your hair smokes. The Zalari started twitching. Your vital signs spiked off the charts. That was the coffee. Your heart rate doubled. It's jet black roast. Jess said seriously. It counts as both medication and a religious experience. Later that cycle, Coalition Command received an emergency update titled Revised Safety Protocols for Human Personnel. Volume 3, the Vega Clause. It included such gems as, if a human says this is probably fine, it isn't. Do not let humans name their own tools. They will name them things like Sparky, Sir Zapsalot, or Kevin. If a human refuses medical help, do not argue. Just offer coffee and wait until they collapse on their own. Meanwhile, Jess was in the engine room humming Highway to the Danger Zone while balancing on one leg inside a plasma coil bracket. A safety drone hovered nearby, projecting a warning light. Jess tossed a wrench at it. The wrench hit, bounced off, and the drone flew away in panic. Drama queen, she muttered. The next day, she received another clearance update. New status. Engineering clearance. Unlimited. Tactical classification. Controlled chaos. Safety protocol exemption. Temporarily suspended due to repeat violations. Nickname. Internal use only containment nightmare. She snorted. I'm not that bad. As she turned the corner, a squad of maintenance staff ducked into a supply closet. Jess sighed, pulled her goggles down, and cracked her neck. Let's see how they feel after I fire up the plasma torch. From behind her, the safety drone emitted a long, electronic whimper. Jessica Vega was halfway through fixing a plasma leak with a ladle, her preferred backup for when her real tools were confiscated for safety reasons, when she got the notification. Priority directive. Report to the Galactic Diplomatic Summit, Sector Theta 9. Your presence has been requested. By name. Jess blinked. Huh. Then she checked the sender. Vexery Empire. She stared at the message like it was a suspicious burrito. You want me to do what now? 24 hours later, She stood in the diplomatic chamber, freshly washed, boots polished, hair braided into what someone at command had called respectable chaos. She was flanked by a coalition of worried ambassadors, twitchy medics, and at least 3 military observers. The Vexery delegation, towering tendrilled crustacean-esque beings encased in glittering armor, watched her with narrowed eye clusters. We were told. The lead Vexery said slowly, voice filtered through a translator, that your species possesses unmatched resilience, that your maintenance personnel are a threat category unto themselves, that you specifically are a walking violation of known physical laws. Jess gave a 2-finger salute. Hi. We thought this an exaggeration, the Vexery continued. A joke. Or propaganda. Understandable, Jess said. We're very sarcastic. The room was silent. On the coalition side, no one breathed. A Zolari diplomat clutched their chest like a heart attack was a viable diplomatic maneuver. The Vexery ambassador gestured, and with a hiss of pressure release, a familiar device rolled forward. The pain test machine. Oh, come on, Jess groaned. This thing again. We would like a demonstration. A CAC officer tried to object. Jess raised a hand. Nah, let's do it. She climbed onto the platform, already removing her jacket and rolling her sleeve. Might as well stretch the legs. The last time you used this device, someone muttered, you were declared a strategic asset and classified as an internal hazard. I was having a good day, Jess said, waving them off. The Vexery began the sequence. Level 1, 10, 20, Jess hummed, like a static zap. Level 40, 50, spicy carpet shock. Level 70, honestly, I've had worse cooking injuries. Ever grabbed a hot cast iron pan after forgetting it was in the oven? The Vexery whispered among themselves. The machine vibrated ominously. Level 85. Jess winced slightly. This is about kidney stone level. Still not quite as bad as stepping on a Lego. At 3 a.m., one Vexery dropped their tablet. Level 90. Now it's like a really angry sunburn, plus maybe a sprained ankle. Still manageable. This is pain, the Vexery ambassador asked. Astonished, Jess shrugged. You should try childbirth, or stub toes, or Earth's tax system. The machine shut off. Everyone sat in stunned silence. Can I go now? Jess asked. There's a fried ice cream place in the food court, and I skipped breakfast. The Vexery ambassador raised a clawed limb. The Vexery Empire formally requests a mutual defense pact with the coalition, effective immediately. The chamber exploded into confusion. Wait, what? Jess said. We no longer doubt the reports. The ambassador said solemnly, you have weaponized suffering. You have tamed entropy. You laugh in the face of agony. You are the worst-case scenario. Jess blinked. I'm a tech. I fix fuses. The Vexery bowed. We will not engage a species whose electricians scare our generals. By the next day, the coalition issued another classification update. Human tactical category, diplomatic weapon of mass disruption. And Jess, she got a free meal at the station's newest Earth-themed restaurant, where a burrito came with a warning label and the spice scale included mild, hot, very hot, human level, Vega's lunch. Jess pointed at the last one. That one. The waiter, a nervous CAC intern, nodded and immediately fled the kitchen. Jess bit into the burrito, smiled, and sighed contentedly. Not bad, she murmured. Still not as intense as that one time I snorted wasabi by accident. For diplomats fainted. Somewhere in the depths of Interstellar Coalition Command, there existed a file marked classified, Jess Vega, cultural anomalies. It had grown from a single incident report to a bloated, chaotic archive of memos, reaction logs, and diplomatic warnings. As of this chapter, the latest entry read, "Warning, do not allow human Vega near alien cuisine without prior briefing." It all started with a simple request. Jess had just finished reprogramming a cargo bay's AI after it attempted to classify thermal socks as a bioweapon when she noticed the smell. Savory, spicy, dangerous. She followed it to the newly opened Cultural Culinary Exchange Pavilion, where a lineup of alien chefs presented their finest dishes. Among them stood a Sea-Hid culinary diplomat proudly offering what looked like a molten red orb. This, the Sea-Hid announced, is a fusion creation, a dish inspired by human earth spices, specifically the ghost pepper. Jess's eyes lit up. "Oh no," muttered a nearby Zalari. "You replicated ghost peppers?" Jess asked. The Sea-Hid puffed up with pride. "After extensive study of human culinary challenges, it is our strongest recipe. It melts containment vessels." Jess grinned. "I'll take two." What followed was historic. Jess bit into the first Sea-Hid ghost orb with all the nonchalance of someone eating nachos at a spaceport bar. The aliens watched in tense silence. She chewed, nodded. "Nice heat," she said. "Reminds me of my uncle's chili. That man tried to murder us every Thanksgiving." The Sea-Hid blinked. "You survive this level of spice regularly?" "Oh, sure," Jess said, popping the second orb into her mouth like a grape. "We even do contests. Once saw a guy eat 6 Carolina Reapers and then go for a jog." The entire culinary pavilion screamed in 10 languages. By the end of the hour, Jess had signed 3 diplomatic autographs for awestruck alien cooks, been interviewed by 2 galactic food historians, accidentally sparked a culinary arms race as rival species attempted to one-up the ghost pepper. A crystalline chef from the Luxari presented a plasma-simmered spice orb. Jess called it a nice mid-range kick. The Vexery returned with a fermented root paste that glowed. Jess politely used it as dip. The Silicon Collective tried a liquid dish that boiled at body temperature. Jess mistook it for soup and asked for bread. Meanwhile, on the upper floors of Coalition Command, diplomats wept. "She's destabilizing food diplomacy." The CAC ambassador groaned. "Who destabilizes food?" She called the ambassador of gastronomic harmony a spice lightweight, whispered a trauma counselor. She added hot sauce to it. A technician whimpered. Twice. By sunset, alien spectators were gathered in stadium seating. A display was constructed. A culinary challenge was declared. Jess stood center stage, holding a ladle in one hand and a napkin in the other, ready for the final dish. It was the Vexery Death Bloom, a volatile spice pod that had once been used to deter pirates. Jess bit in. Silence. She chewed. Needs salt. The Vexery fainted. The next day, the Coalition's culinary database issued a universal alert. Warning: human cuisine is not safe for general consumption. Extreme caution advised. Note: Earth, hot sauce, is classified as a Class 3 thermal hazard. Jess, for her part, was back in engineering, sipping tea and rubbing her stomach. "Okay," she admitted to her safety drone. "That one did burn coming out." The drone beeped nervously and handed her a jug of milk. By the time Jess Vega was featured on 3 alien food safety advisories, 6 cultural psychology briefings, and 1 cooking-based martial arts show, it became clear to the Coalition that containment wasn't an option. It was already too late, because someone no one would admit who live-streamed the Spice Gauntlet. And now, Jess Vega was a galactic internet superstar. It started as a trickle, reposts of her biting into a Sea-Hid ghost pepper without flinching. Then came the reaction vids. A group of Vulpax teens mimicked her spice face while crying and shouting, "Vega level!" The Silicon Collective launched a holographic reaction analysis stream featuring real-time data on Jess's sweat rate, heart rhythm, and cheek muscle tension. When she shrugged and asked for hot sauce, a billion beings collectively screamed. Then came the inevitable: meme pages, remix compilations, reaction holograms of gelatinous beings weeping with admiration. One galactic council in turn tried to suppress it. They are now studying early retirement options on a quiet asteroid. Within a week, Earth had become the top-viewed cultural node in the galactic streaming network. And by the second week, alien influencers were baking sourdough. Jess first noticed the trend when she walked into engineering and found a gelatinous tech trying to knead dough with vibrating appendages. "Squarb," she said, eyebrow raised. "Are you making bread?" "It is for the galaxy-wide sourdough challenge," Squarb replied proudly, surrounded by flour and confusion. "Your species bakes to manage anxiety. We are attempting the same." Jess blinked. "You don't even have a mouth." "We will absorb the flavor," Squarb said serenely. Soon it was everywhere. A mantis-like diplomat posted time-lapse of its growing herb garden with the caption, "Jess says plants are good for peace." The Vexery started a segment called "This Human Tried It," featuring attempts at Earth hobbies, including crocheting, taxidermy, and something alarmingly similar to dodgeball. The Hivemind Collective launched a group consciousness baking show. Their first episode, The Doughing Coalition Command, was not coping well. She single-handedly turned the diplomatic infrastructure into a cottagecore craft fair. An ambassador moaned. "Better than war," a Mektari shrugged, gluing macaroni to paper. Meanwhile, Jess received a surprise invite to a live-streamed pangalactic bake-off. She accepted, mostly because someone offered her a t-shirt that said, "We'll bake for peace and explosions." The bake-off was broadcast across 6 star systems. Jess, in an apron that said, "Don't talk to me until I've proved something," presented her cinnamon rolls with extra spice. The aliens wept. The gelatinous judge oozed admiration. The Silicon Collective spontaneously evolved a taste protocol. A crystalline being from the Council of High Doctrine tried sourdough and wrote a treatise on intercom. 1 week later, 23 planetary conflicts de-escalated because someone introduced tea and pastry diplomacy. The coalition's newest department was hastily created, Department of Soft Power, Culinary and Streaming Division. Lead human consultant Jessica Vega, her official job: spread peace through baked goods and unfiltered sarcasm. Her real job: keep being exactly who you are. By now, Jess Vega had become many things to many species. To the coalition's engineers, she was a walking OSHA violation. To the alien youth of 10 systems, she was a meme goddess. To the Vexery Empire, she was the only known deterrent to psychic warfare. And to the diplomatic staff of the Sehid Accord, she was the woman who started the tea treaty. It began, as most diplomatic breakthroughs do, with a stomachache. Jess had eaten one too many glowing spice pastries from a Silicon Collective bake-off, and was now curled up in the engineering lounge, groaning softly and sipping from a steaming mug. "What's that?" asked a curious Zalari envoy visiting on a cross-cultural observation tour. "Chamomile tea," Jess mumbled, cradling the mug like it contained the soul of the universe. "It's what Earth gives people when their guts revolt or their brains need a hug." The envoy tilted their head. "It heals." Jess sipped again. "Not really. It's warm, though. It feels like healing." The envoy took notes. So did the 8 other observers behind them. Within hours, the phrase "Earth Comfort Beverage Ritual" was trending in 3 languages. The next day, the first Alien Tea Summit was held. By accident, delegates from 27 species arrived at the Earth Pavilion, each clutching mugs of wildly different liquids: boiling plasma broth, crystal-infused nectar, steaming gelatinous infusions. Jess, still recovering from her spice-induced near-death experience, was asked to chair the gathering. "I'm just here for the tea," she protested. "You're now the cultural axis of 3 peace talks," the CAC diplomat hissed. "Please sip and nod wisely." The summit began awkwardly. No one knew how to proceed. Protocol was unclear. The Volari ambassador tried dipping tentacles in their brew. So Jess stood up and raised her mug. To shared liquids and fewer wars. Silence. Then toasts, hundreds of mugs raised. Glowing, steaming, sloshing. The moment was oddly profound. That's when the chicken soup incident happened. An Earth chef, inspired by Jess's story, served a modified human recovery broth to several diplomats. It contained chicken, noodles, carrots, a note that read, "May not cure all ailments, but it sure makes them less annoying." The Sea-Hid diplomat wept, literally, with bioluminescent tears. "This," they said, spoon trembling, "is what I imagine peace would taste like." By the end of the week, the Sea-Hid and Vulpax signed a non-aggression pact over hot soup. The hive mind began exchanging broth recipes. The Vexery proposed a galactic liquid harmony accord. Jess accidentally sparked a treaty by making comfort food. Again, the coalition was, by now, just rolling with it. They issued an updated classification. Jess Vega, strategic soft power asset. Subtype, culinary/emotional disarmament. Her codename? T-Titan. When asked for comment, Jess replied, "Honestly, I just wanted to keep my stomach from imploding. But if that saves the galaxy, sure, next round's on me." Then she reached into her jacket and pulled out a thermos labeled peace juice. The Vexery fainted. It began, as galactic incidents often do, with an email. Urgent summit deadlock. High tensions. Multiple delegations threatening to walk. Bring Jess. Jess Vega was, at the time, wrist-deep in a plasma regulator that had decided emotional detonation was a valid conflict resolution strategy. She glanced at the message, sighed, and wiped her hands on a towel with several new burn holes in it. "Great," she muttered. "Diplomacy time." Again. The diplomatic chamber was on fire. Not literally, though Jess wouldn't have been surprised. It was a metaphorical fire. Heated glares, flared gill sacks, bioluminescent veins pulsing in what looked like Technicolor rage. The dispute, a trade route disagreement between the Thalazari clans and the Volat Federation. Centuries of passive tension had finally boiled over into open insults. Your culture's use of plasma-woven freight nets is an ecological atrocity, and yours is a disgrace to the very concept of logistics. Jess sat quietly in the corner, sipping soup from a thermos and wondering how long it would take before someone threw a diplomatic chair. "Ms. Vega," a nervous Caccade whispered, "please do something." Jess raised an eyebrow. "I'm a mechanic. You're also the reason the Sea-Hid Accord signed a non-aggression treaty over bone broth. Please, something." She stood, walked to the center of the chaos, set her thermos down, and pulled out a casserole dish. "Gentle beings," she said calmly, "I brought food." Every gill, crystal lattice, and photoreactive eye in the room turned. "This," she said, removing the lid, "is baked ziti." Silence. "It's noodles, cheese, sauce, optional mushrooms. You know what it's not?" She leaned forward, complicated. The room watched in stunned curiosity as she plated the dish and set it on the shared negotiation table. "When humans have family arguments, we eat this," she continued. "It doesn't solve anything, but it makes people stop yelling long enough to chew. And while they're chewing, they listen." The Thalazari representative took a tentative bite. The Volat ambassador followed. Seconds ticked by, and then a forked tentacle reached for seconds. Negotiations paused, then restarted, this time with full mouths, less shouting, and far more recipe requests. Within an hour, a compromise was drafted. Within 2 hours, a cultural exchange agreement was signed. And by the end of the day, The Wallet ambassador had promised to develop a cheese-safe freight net. The next morning, the coalition issued a new field manual update. Category: Culinary Conflict De-escalation Protocols. Recommended asset: Jess Vega. Preferred tools: soup, tea, casserole. When asked for comment, Jess said, "I just didn't want them to ruin the floor. It's nice tile." The Thalazari-Wallet Agreement became known informally as the ZD Pact. The signing was commemorated with engraved utensils and commemorative recipe scrolls. Jess returned to engineering and found a pie left on her bench with a note: "For your next crisis." The culinary ambassadors. She smiled. "Guess I'll need to bring dessert next time." The official records would later call it the Interstellar Culinary Accord of Unity. Historians, however, would know it by its far more accurate name, the Muffin Mandate. It started, as all grand galactic shifts seem to, with breakfast. Jess Vega arrived at the coalition's grand forum prepared for yet another emergency diplomacy session. In her bag, a fusion wrench, a spare capacitor coil, a dozen banana nut muffins. She wasn't expecting to cause an interstellar treaty signing. Again, inside, the forum chamber buzzed with panic. Dozens of alien delegates were embroiled in a new crisis, an artificial intelligence code dispute between the Mirasian Spire and the Hive Mind Collective. Apparently, someone had accused someone else's language models of plagiarizing theological subroutines. Jess stood at the back, chewing a muffin. "This," she muttered, "is why I fix reactors. They don't file lawsuits." As the debate spiraled into recursive insult loops and automated complaint subroutines, Jess sighed and walked to the center of the chamber. She held up a muffin. "Gentle beings," she said, projecting her voice, "I bring you carbs." The room fell silent. "This is a banana nut muffin," she explained. "It doesn't solve code disputes, but it does make you shut up long enough to remember you're sentient beings with mouths and shared breakfast culture." The muffin hovered, suspended in a slow spin by a curious telekinetic delegate. The room's ambient tension wavered. The Hive Mind Collective tried a bite. "This is like forgiveness in edible format." They pulsed emotionally. The Meraxians ran a sentiment analysis. It returned a 97% likelihood of delicious reconciliation. Within minutes, every delegate had a muffin. Within the hour, new code-sharing protocols were agreed upon, based not on aggression, but on recipe-style documentation. New rules were called things like the butter line exception, the fold don't stir clause, and, of course, the Treaty of Sprinkles. The Galactic Council passed a resolution declaring baked goods as acceptable mediatory instruments under emergency protocols. Jess was given a commemorative apron that read, "Ambassador of Soft Power, Diplomatic Grade Muffins since Cycle 8431. She wore it to her next engineering shift. Her legacy? The Muffin Mandate became a formal part of galactic conflict resolution training. New diplomats were taught to bake as part of their cultural preparedness curriculum. And the Treaty of Sprinkles? It now serves as the legal basis for shared AI innovation across 6 species, peaceful culinary exchange stations on 5 moons, and a rotating dessert arbitration panel presided over by Jess once a quarter. As she sat that evening in the engineering lounge, sipping tea beside a fresh tray of muffins, Jess sighed contentedly. She hadn't meant to change the galaxy. She just hadn't eaten breakfast.